In episode 4, about a week later, Lord Debling ends up calling on Penelope, which is a huge deal. It's even shocking to her family. They can't believe that somehow she has snagged the number one bachelor on the market, but she seemingly has. During calling hour, there's another surprising person that shows up at a woman's door. It's Benedict. He shows up at Lady Arnold's house looking to call upon her, but she tells him, "I don't want to be called upon." No, she just wants she wants to have sex with him, I assume, because they go up to her bedroom and they start hooking up. It's cool. And then finally over at the Bridgerton household, the morning starts out with a conversation between Colin and his mother. She knows that when Colin asked about friends becoming lovers of the day, there was a reason for it. She figures that it probably had to do with Penelope. So she just asks him, was there a reason behind that? Trying to pry that story out of him. But he says, no, I was just being speculative, that's all. Violet's not really going to press the issue, so she just moves on. She moves on to Francesca's calling hour. Violet is preparing for Lord Samadani to call upon Francesca, but Francesca does warn her mother, hey, it's not a given. They then hear, though, that there is somebody to call upon Francesca, and it's a guy named John Sterling, who's the Earl of Kilmartin. It's not Lord Samadani, but John Sterling had a really nice conversation with Francesca the other night when she stepped out to get some fresh air. Well, I mean, conversation, it really wasn't a conversation. They literally didn't say many words to each other, but Francesca definitely gets a smile on her face when he shows up. And just like the other night, they just sit there and they don't say a word. It's pretty weird. Even her family is kind of looking from a distance going, what the hell is going on here? But then that all gets broken up when Lord Samadani does show up. And it's a little awkward for Lord Kilmartin, but he understands and he steps out to let Lord Samadani have his moment with Francesca. Once calling hour is over, all of the families are going to gather to go to this art gallery exhibit during the day. It's really another chance for women and men of society to mingle about each other and hopefully find a match. One of those women is Penelope, but when she dare grab a book and start looking at it, because this art exhibit is seemingly at someone's house, her mother comes over and yells at her. Her mother, seeing the opportunity that Penelope has to marry Lord Debling and have a good life for herself, doesn't want Penelope squandering it. Her advice to Penelope is to play dumb and have the men mansplain everything to her. And when Lord Debling does interrupt this conversation, it gets weird because Lord Debling asks her, hey, are you reading the fabled Northwest Passage? Penelope starts to answer, yeah, I actually was. I find it, but Lady Featherington cuts her off and just says, she finds it terribly confusing. We can't understand it. Could you explain it to us? And obviously that's embarrassing for Penelope, who can read and does understand all of it. Lady Featherington does end up moving aside to let Penelope actually have a conversation with Lord Debling, but as the two are talking, that's when the Bridgertons show up, and Colin right away notices that his friend Penelope is chatting it up with Lord Debling, and she's smiling a lot. But Colin isn't the only one who's a little perturbed by this potential relationship. Another eagle-eyed partygoer is Cressida. She really thought she had a chance with Lord Debling, and now she's worried that she's going to be married off to one of her father's friends who's old and decrepit. What both Cressida and Colin aren't aware of is just how good the conversation between Penelope and Lord Debling is going. It's going so well that Lord Debling hints at proposing to Penelope, and if she would accept or not. And she doesn't really give an answer. But she is very excited over the prospect of becoming Lady Debling. It looks like Penelope has won the battle for Lord Debling, and Cressida is going to have to wait for somebody else. But the next day, the calling hour does not go as expected. She does have somebody call upon her, but it's Eloise. And that really pisses off Cressida's parents. So much so that as Eloise is leaving, she overhears her dad say, you got to stop hanging out with that Bridgerton girl. Because they desperately want their daughter to marry off. It's not like Cressida doesn't want that too, but she also doesn't want to lose her only friend. As for Eloise's mother and sister, Francesca, they're walking the streets and discussing the next night's ball and Lord Samadani and whether there's real interest there when Francesca notices that Lord Kilmartin is a few feet away, so she stops him. She questions him about why he left so abruptly the other morning, but he says, you had another caller? At one point in this awkward interaction, they overhear somebody playing a fiddle, and when Lord Kilmartin says, man, it's really enjoyable music, don't you think? Francesca says, actually, no. The pace is too fickle. When you think you're starting to comprehend the melody, the song is over. A song like this would be far better if it were played in 3/4, so one could in fact feel the music. And then just like the other day, Lord Kilmartin excuses himself and walks away, leaving both Bridgerton women kind of confused at his behavior. The big moment of that day, though, comes at the Featherington household, when Lord Debling shows up, but he doesn't really meet with Penelope. He meets with Lady Featherington to ask for Penelope's hand in marriage. And Lady Featherington is thrilled with Penelope. She can't believe that she accomplished this feat. But just as Lady Featherington is getting really excited about the prospects of her daughter marrying Debling, Penelope says, I haven't said yes yet. And Lady Featherington kind of laughs at her and says, What? This guy's perfect. Like, what do you want? But Penelope doesn't know how to answer that question. And that's when her mother looks at her and says, oh, come on. Don't tell me you're holding out for love. Penelope, love is make-believe. It's only in storybooks. This is why I didn't want you reading. You know what's romantic? Security. Stability. That's Lord Debling. Be smart, and if you're not going to be, then I'll be it for you. Penelope is planning on seeing Lord Debling later that night at that night's ball. Well, one person who might not be there is Colin. He comes downstairs and tells his mother, yeah, I'm not feeling that great. And that's because Colin's hungover. He spent most of the previous day at a brothel. In a last-ditch effort to get him to show up, because, after all, a mother knows what's going on, Violet says to him, you know, it'd be a shame if you missed the fruits of your labor. I hear Penelope may be getting proposed to tonight. Lady Featherington can't stop telling anyone who will listen. And Colin can't believe that Penelope's getting proposed to that quickly, but it does give him food for thought. Violet, Francesca, and Eloise then head to that night's ball, where Violet is just laser focused on everything Francesca is doing. So much so that when Marcus, or I should say Lord Anderson, comes over to give her some cake, she says, I have no appetite. But Lord Anderson has some appetite for that ass. The two start chatting it up, and at one point Violet mentions how shaping society is one of Lady Danbury's pastimes, and that's surprising to Marcus, because Marcus and Lady Danbury don't have a great relationship. They're not very close. Marcus showing up at all has really annoyed Lady Danbury. He asks Violet who's the target this time, and Violet says, it's my daughter, Francesca. But I just don't know that she's found that spark yet. He then brings up his relationship with his wife, how it was arranged, but he ended up finding that spark, and Violet brings up that her marriage was a love marriage. And Marcus comments that he was always jealous of that. He always wanted a love marriage. But those two aren't the only ones that are watching Francesca and Lord Semidani dance. The Queen, along with Lady Danbury, and Alice Mondrich are also watching from the balcony. The Queen is so invested in this marriage because if the, quote, diamond of the season marries who she handpicked for the diamond of the season, it'll look favorably in the next edition of Whistledown. When the conversation dies down a little bit, Alice turns to Lady Danbury and says, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to invite me up here. I didn't want to miss another ball, especially showing up solo. And the reason why Alice has shown up by herself is because Will is busy tending to his club, which is really looked at as a no-no. Now that he's a member of society, he's not supposed to be working. He's supposed to hire people to do that. But Will literally enjoys working at the club. That's the problem. And Lady Danbury has to tell Alice, you got to convince him to do something else, because the Queen is not going to look favorably on Will working at a club now that he has this title. So Alice is going to have to figure out something. After this conversation with Alice, though, Lady Danbury looks down and she sees that her brother is talking to Violet, so she decides to head for the door. As she's trying to leave, though, Marcus ends up flagging her down and says, where are you going? Lady Danbury explains that everything's going well. The Queen is satisfied. She's going to head home for the night. And Marcus asks her, if you're done meddling, then can I be your next target? I do hear you're something of a molder of society. And Marcus has shown back up in town because he is looking for a new wife. But Lady Danbury shuts down that idea real quick and in rude fashion. She's not trying to help out her brother, especially hook up with Violet Bridgerton. She then heads home. Now, the Queen's Diamond of the season has been spending most of the night with Lord Semidani, but that doesn't stop Francesca from talking to Lord Kilmartin at the ball. Francesca, though, is kind of annoyed with Kilmartin. She can't quite figure him out. He shows up, he doesn't talk, he leaves. And she doesn't mind the not talking part, but the leaving abruptly part, she's annoyed with. And Lord Kilmartin can figure that out, so he says, you got to forgive me for rushing off, but I wanted to get you this. And he hands her a music scroll. And what the music is from is the fiddler from the other day that was playing. He had the music changed exactly how she thought it should be. Kilmartin goes on to tell her that he's not a man of many words, but what he does believe in is the power of a gesture. And that gesture seems to work because Francesca is beaming. She's so excited to get this gesture that she wants to leave early to go play it at home, which takes Violet completely off guard, and it also takes Lord Semidani off guard. But the person that pisses off the most is the Queen. The Queen can't figure out what the hell's going on. Now, not too far away from the Queen, in another booth, is Eloise, trying to avoid everybody. And Cressida shows up, trying to chat with her friend, but Eloise says, well, are you sure that you should be here? I mean, I am that Bridgerton girl. And Cressida apologizes for what her father said. Cressida has no plans on not hanging out with Eloise. A later rival to this party is going to be Eloise's brother, Colin, who on second thought decided to show up at the party because he couldn't live with himself knowing that Penelope has gotten engaged and he didn't get a chance to tell Penelope how he felt. Colin shows up and completely interrupts a dance with Debling and Penelope, which leaves Debling a little surprised, and that's when Cressida swoops in to steal that dance, seeing her opportunity. And at first, Colin is just trying to talk Penelope out of marrying Lord Debling because she barely knows him. And Penelope kind of gives Colin the same spiel that her mother gave her earlier in the day. The conversation is very contentious, and when the dance ends, Lord Debling starts heading for the exit, ignoring Penelope altogether, and Penelope kind of yells at Colin while chasing after Lord Debling. When she finally catches up to him, Lord Debling is not planning on proposing. Because after having a quick conversation with Cressida, he's finally figured it out. All week, he's noticed that Penelope is searching for somebody, and now he realizes that somebody is Colin Bridgerton. He was told that Penelope reads from this window. Well, he found out that across the street is the Bridgerton household. It's pretty clear that Penelope has feelings for Colin Bridgerton. Debling tells her that he's going to be gone for 3 years, so it's important that he make a match with somebody whose affections are not already engaged elsewhere. He ends the conversation by telling her that whatever she's searching for, he hopes she finds it, and he leaves. And he's replaced by Lady Featherington, who right away says, "What have you done?" And Penelope is so turned off by that question, because it's clear to her that the only value she has to her mother is an engagement ring on her finger. For the third time this season, Penelope runs out of a ball and finds a carriage to get into. Only this time, she's joined by Colin Bridgerton. At first, the conversation's contentious, but when he finds out that Lord Debling didn't propose, it opens the door for Colin to tell Penelope how he feels. The two hook up, they kiss. A hand goes under her dress. She makes this face that I make when a place has s'mores ice cream. It's rare, but it's delicious. The two finally have told each other how they feel, and when they arrive at the Bridgerton house, Colin gets out and he turns to Penelope and says, "Well, are you going to marry me or not?" And Penelope is elated. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.